Welcome to the Combative Nerds Podcast. Join us while we break balls and try to outwit each other at every turn while debating all things nerddom and trying to make sense of this world. Look, I'm not gonna lie, this is a Herculean task and I'm not sure we have enough brain power to do so. At the very least, we can laugh and offend each other through the process. Thanks for sharing your day with us. Now on to our show. Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Raiderlance and
FighterWizard.
FighterWizard, author of How to Look Weathered, but Still Look Good.
Yeah, I'm the shitty Harrison Ford of podcasting.
All right, I apologize. That's me. Let's edit that out. Let's start all over again. All right, 3, 2, 1. Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Raiderlance and
FighterWizard.
FighterWizard, author of The Open Guard and Why I Don't Write Down My Passwords.
Yeah.
That was a delayed reaction.
I got it. You can edit that to make me seem not so stupid, but I got it.
So there's a little inside baseball. Today we're going to review the new HBO Max show, The Last of Us, Episode 1. Now, we were planning on doing 2, but there were some technical difficulties. So we're just going to do 1. We'll do another show for 2, and hopefully we'll catch us up. So hopefully it'll be a weekly thing, or maybe we'll do a couple episodes together. We'll see how it goes. We'll play it by ear. FighterWizard, how you doing, brother?
Doing great. Don't have much to share other than that, but I'm doing pretty good.
Well, okay, let's do the housekeeping. Please like, subscribe, share this content. We are a new startup. We could use whatever help. I know right now we're only doing audiograms. You were expecting some video. We're working on it. I just got my new Mac. I'm working with a 10-year-old computer right now.
Same.
Tool up, learn some video editing, and we plan on bringing you video in the future. So please, just hang in there with us. All right.
Yeah, it is pretty nice to get feedback. It's great to get comments because that helps us sculpt and know what works, what doesn't, just beyond the analytics and the metrics that we get. And it's cool to know that we have, I won't say impact, but I will say some sort of reach because I've seen how long people listen to our stuff.
Yeah. So not to burn any more time, but let's get into it. The Last of Us. I think you did some research for us.
I did a little bit of research. My original research was, so if you don't know The Last of Us, and I can't imagine that if you listen to this channel and you're listening to this podcast, you wouldn't know that The Last of Us is a video game released for the PlayStation 3, I think in 2013.
Damn, that long ago?
Right? Yeah, I know. There were remastered versions and versions released for the PS4 and subsequently the PS5. Those are the remastered versions. There was also a sequel to The Last of Us called The Last of Us Part 2. Inspired, I know. The Last of Us is consistently rated as one of the best video games ever made. And if you look back through the list of the best video games ever made, if you stopped a random person on the street, maybe not someone who's a really big enthusiast like yourself, like me, IEG, etc., and you said, hey, name 10 video games. Even if they scratch their brain, chances are it's the video games that you would think of.
Sure.
Super Mario Brothers, Legend of Zelda. But Last of Us is on that list. For me, I played that right around the same time I was big into Mass Effect, specifically Mass Effect 2. Mass Effect 2 is on the list of the greatest video games ever made.
Of course.
And it sounds from that intro like I've played the video game an appreciable amount of time, but that is not true. I have played The Last of Us for about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. I made it as far in the game as the show makes it in the first episode and first 10 minutes of episode 2. I can see distinctly where I stopped because the show is very good, and we'll get into it, about using scenery in the game and recreating that very well in the show. But I didn't make it far because I couldn't get past some of the thematic elements that I'm sure we're about to get into. So, cards on the table.
Okay.
I'll just admit, you never show up to anything in life without bringing yourself. So the reason that I could not make it, and I'm sorry in advance, they're going to be spoilers.
Oh, yeah.
If you're going to play the game, this is going to ruin the first 10 minutes of it.
10-year-old game, guys.
The Titanic sinks. If you're watching the show, this will ruin about minute 40 of the first episode. So I come to the table with a little bit of family history in younger girls dying in my family, which is an unpleasant thing. Within the first 10 minutes of playing the game and around minute 40 in this first episode of Last of Us, Joel's daughter dies tragically because she is shot
Right.
He is also shot, but she's shot through. She's in front of him, and the bullet goes through her and hits him. That was a lot to take when I didn't have kids, and I just couldn't cope with having that being a core issue for the main character and having that constantly echoed in the second main character, Ellie. So I pretty much put it down then.
Yeah, I can see that.
It's a lot more to take now that I have a daughter. So that's what I bring to the table, and that's why I have that giant mea culpa of, it's a great game, never fucking played it, but it's a great game, you should.
Yeah.
So
I played the game. I love the game. I didn't have kids back then. Wait, no, I take that back. My son was newborn. Watching that scene in this show, yeah, I got choked up. I did not want to watch that scene because now I was the father. I wasn't just a game player watching a scene. And that's all sorts of fucked, which makes it a much more compelling story. But yeah, if I had something to hit home, if I was a father playing that game, I might have not played the game further past that point if I couldn't have had a beer and move forward or something like that. You know what I mean? So no, I hear you. I think that's a justifiable reason to not play it. So let's get to our format of the show. What did you like about episode 1?
It's so kind of like when we talked about Andor, where we just had a 2.5 second what we didn't like, and then just fucking creamed our jeans on it for about an hour and a half. There isn't much that I didn't like with Last of Us. I wrote down notes scene by scene, but for me, the general thrust of what I liked is, from what I've played, it's a very accurate recreation of the game's aesthetic.
Yeah.
The characters are faithfully recreated, but now I'll just move off the game and into the show that I watched.
Sure.
The acting is superb. Pedro Pascal is having his renaissance right now.
Right.
Between The Mandalorian and Game of Thrones, which I know you recently started watching and hating, and now Last of Us, the dude is nailing it.
I have to cut you off specifically because you use the term nailing it. This is my bias. Every time I see that actor now, I imagine him slapping the ass of a young boy and grabbing it from Game of Thrones. That's right. Fucked The Mandalorian for me. That is going to be.
He plays the bisexual Prince Doran, the Red Viper.
You know what? That's fine. The grabbing the ass and shaking the meat part, that stuck with me. I was like, Mando, how could you be doing that?
This is the way.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised how often that Mando quote can be used as a good joke, no matter what terrible thing you're fucking describing.
That was great. I wish I didn't watch Game of Thrones recently because the bias is just, I'm like, where's your accent, dude? I don't understand.
Yeah.
Man, Tess is a downgrade. Let's be honest here, Prince.
So one of the things that I liked about it is I wasn't sure of Pedro Pascal's ability. I mean, granted, he's a professional actor.
Sure.
But I wasn't sure of his ability to differentiate the father figure that he is in Mandalorian from the father figure that he has to play as Joel in Last of Us. Mm-hmm. And the two men, as they should be, could not be more different.
Really? I see the broodiness in the same character.
I can see that.
Okay.
But the broodiness, I think, comes from two very different sources. With Mandalorian, the Mandalorian is constantly at war with how he was raised and the code by which he lives his life.
Yeah.
With Joel, the issue is he lost his daughter tragically, and the world crumbled around him, notwithstanding. But he lost his daughter tragically, and now he doesn't have that core of of his life, of who he is. And I really thought Pedro Pascal did a fantastic job, or is doing a fantastic job at representing this man whose life has been cored from him, along with everyone else in society.
I would agree, and I would point to the scene where they're doing, I guess, the cremation. And
it's exactly what I was thinking.
And the woman saw the kid and was able to connect and be like, I can't do that. And he just looked and was like, he didn't give well, that sucks. He just looked like, yeah, this is the world. You could see that he has closed off certain doors of his mind and heart.
So I was thinking of exactly the same scene, and Like I said, I wrote down the back-to-back little girl death scene. Awful, obviously,
Right.
but because those two scenes are close together and necessarily edited that way, I would imagine, it shows not only the transformation of Joel, because he's holding both girls in exactly the same way.
Right.
The way he holds his daughter before she dies, and the way he holds the 12-year-old girl who's put to death because she's infected.
Right.
And he doesn't reverentially place the body in the cremation pit.
Yeah.
He just drops her in it.
I thought he rolled her, but no, I think you're right.
It was just
a
sort
body.
of this, it's just a body. It was this sort of soulless thing that clearly the other person next to him couldn't do.
Right.
And he was able to do it because the man who he'd become didn't have a soul anymore once his daughter passed.
Do you think that the very next scene of him taking the job that pays more, of going into the sewers and shoveling shit, was that more of him being the person with a plan who's a smuggler trying to make enough money to then buy the car and the batteries? Or was it everything shit, so I don't mind it?
That's a good point. I didn't think about that until you started saying it. I just took it as a fun. I'm pretty dense when it comes to these things. So I just took it as a funny line. Which one pays more? Probably the one with the shit.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if there was so little left of him that he didn't care and he just wanted money to survive. But then later on in the scene where I see that he needs a bunch of money to fulfill the smuggler's plan, or we'll find out whatever it is when he's talking to the security guard, he just wants more money so he can fulfill that plan sooner. Or it could be a blend of both.
Yeah, I like that.
Because life is shit at that point.
He doesn't seem, based on the character that is presented in the first episode, he doesn't seem like a guy that's going to crawl into a big pile of shit to make a little bit more money. He seems like he'll do something dangerous to do something to get more money, but not literal refuse.
Yeah, no, I agree. And so in your research, did you find out a little bit background of the character Joel? Because the only thing that we see in the show is that he's former military, but they don't explain what, how, or anything like that.
You know what? I'll bet if I played the game, I would.
I don't remember. It's been 10 years and my brain's fried.
I wanted to know the history of the game. I didn't want to know the plot because I want to be, taken along for the ride. So other than that, he has former military and people refer to him as capable, and he's clearly gained some sort of skill as well over the ensuing 20 years. The opening scenes of the show take place in 2003, I believe. And we start in 2023. In the game, it's 2013 to 2033. But, whatever. So other than he was in Operation Enduring Freedom, or he was a veteran of the war of Afghanistan.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We don't know that much more. But to back up a little bit, so one of the things I think the show does really well, it starts out and really hits the horror movie tropes. I like horror movies. I really enjoy them. I think zombie movies are a bit overplayed, but if they're done well, they're still enjoyable. And the first part that got me is you get like kind of the low music, or you get the quick and effective characterization of their relationship. He's clearly this blue collar worker who doesn't want shit for health, and she makes him drink OJ for vitamin C. 2 lines of dialogue, and you get a complete solidification of their relationship.
His child mother, right?
Yeah. She clearly loves him. They have a fun relationship. That's not fun, but it's, there's some tragedy there because there's no mother in the picture. And there's not much that, tips the scale of something bad's going to happen, even though, they already set up the funky or fungi. I don't know what the correct pronunciation of it is, being able to take over a person, or an ant's brain is the example. And that's true. That also happens with other organisms in the animal kingdom. Fascinating. There's a fluke, I believe.
Bees or wasps?
It does it so the only examples I know are hymenopterans, which is ants and bees and wasps. And one of the, not only is there an ant that essentially gets very much zombified and resistant to decomposition, there's another one, I think it's a fluke, that in order to reproduce, it has to be in the gut of a bird, I believe. So it makes the bug develop essentially a physical tick to crawl up on top of a blade of grass and thereby get consumed more easily by its predator.
Damn.
Fucking right?
Damn.
Yeah. That's some vicious shit. So the very first little thing is when she's in class and she got in the reflection of the guy's watch is on her face, and he has that physical tick. And then when she goes over to her neighbor's house, she's nice and she wants to help her neighbor out, who's this old catatonic woman. And just as a side note, when she comes in and her neighbor's like making cookies, she's like, I'm making cookies. Ooh, chocolate chip. And the woman gets all proud. Raisin. Fuck her. Raisin cookies suck. Fucking no one likes raisin cookies.
Oatmeal cookies always have raisins in them. We're not talking about that.
No, she just made raisin cookies. She did like chocolate chip batter and then raisin, like sugar cookies with raisins in them. Maybe gingerbread. I don't know. But who puts raisins in cookies? I've never heard about that.
Is this a Texas thing?
She deserved to get her neck chewed apart by her own mother.
I think that's a fair call. That poor woman was in such a catatonic state, she couldn't tell her child, what the hell are you doing? Stop cooking with raisins.
You know what? Actually, I don't think she was infected by cordyceps. I think that the raisins drove her to a rage. When we talked about Aliens and Roadhouse, we talked about the sexual magnetism of Swayze.
Sure.
And his ability to drain potency from each town that he went in. I think the power of raisin cookies spurred such a negative emotion that it allowed the grandmother to regenerate, essentially.
Can you imagine a horror movie based on raisin cookies?
Now I can. I think it would just be a bunch of like resentful people like, I made you some cookies, fuck you, and just like throw raisin cookies. They're disgusting. Who likes raisin?
These are really a thing?
Yeah.
Wait, 45 years of life, never heard of a raisin cookie before. Rightfully so.
Well, yeah, it's disgusting. When raisins are acceptable one time, when you're a child and you need a small snack to go in your lunch, or when you're an adult and you're making a small snack for your child in a little box of Sun-Made raisins at no other time. But yeah, fuck it. They're also super toxic to dogs and cats. So
and old women.
No more raisins. Clearly. Maybe they're a cure.
I don't think so.
So they have that little like tick, which if you didn't see the intro, you wouldn't think about it. But then I love it when horror movies do this. They'll have the conversation going on in the foreground, and in the background, they'll have the piece of scenery that that's very clearly noticeable. And then the old woman starts to tick a little bit and like opens her mouth. It's so good. And it's so creepy. And it was so well done.
I enjoyed that scene.
As soon as it's done, I'm in. I know it's about to happen. I know the tragic scene's coming up. I'm in for this show.
So I'm assuming you listen to Joe Rogan's podcast every once in a while.
Yeah.
So I would think this show would be his wet dream, because for years he's been talking about cordyceps sinensis mushrooms and how they give you energy. I actually take them every once in a while pre-workout because they help you with the, I think it's the ATP production, similar to creatine. Mm-hmm. And so he has been talking about shit like this for years, that we're introducing all these fungi or mushrooms and how it eventually, that's how the end of the world's going to happen.
I haven't heard that particular podcast. I'm sure he's going to talk about it more now.
Yeah, it was just interesting. Well, let's jump back to the horror story aspect of it. I think, I don't know what you want to call it, but when the zombies took over in this show.
Zombies is fine.
It was one of the best chaotic rampage scenes I've seen in a movie. I mean, we're talking up there with like World War Z. What was that movie?
28 Days Later?
No, fuck that movie. Fast Zombies. Hate them.
That's what I wrote down. Fast Zombies, underline, exclamation point.
Yeah, fuck that shit. No, the one where you can't make a noise. The aliens, I think they're aliens. A Silent Place?
I never saw it. It's
A Quiet
Place with John Krasinski.
Other than those are the two like really chaotic scenes that come to mind. And I think this was probably better than all of them. I think it did what A Quiet Place did, but it did it better.
So I've not seen A Quiet Place. I've seen World War Z. I've seen 28 Days Later. I think I've seen 28 Weeks Later, whatever the sequel to that is. And I totally agree with you. Again, having not seen Quiet Place, when I see World War Z, which I actually watched pretty recently because I read the book and I saw the movie, read the book, and then saw the movie again, just really enjoyed it. That's a cool societal breakdown scene. But you're looking at it through the eyes of Jerry, who's this United Nations badass, super capable. He always kind of knows the next right thing to do. And it's well acted and it's well portrayed. But here, Joel's a construction worker.
Yeah, no helicopter's coming to save him.
No helicopter. He's got a cool truck. It's not even a cool truck. It's a good truck. He knows how to use a gun. He can beat some shit out of people with a wrench, but he's a construction worker. And all he's trying to do is get his buddy Tommy and his daughter out of their home. And seen from that very domestic point of view, which both you and I can relate to as we record this in our respective homes, there's something more gripping about that than seeing Brad. Plus, it's not Brad Pitt. Like Pedro Pascal, he is a good-looking man, but he could live next to me, and I wouldn't be like, wow. He'd be like the handsome neighbor, but he wouldn't be Brad Pitt or Cristiano Ronaldo or like someone like beautiful or whatever. I don't know. It's more powerful because of that. And when they're doing the societal breakdown, especially notice it with the planes, something will happen 15, 30, 40 seconds later. That thing will become much bigger.
Interesting.
So the planes start passing over, and then in the background, boom, that plane comes in. You're like, fuck yes. Or, well, no, but yes. That's terrible. All these people are dying, but great scene.
It was interesting. My brain, while watching that, wanted to make sense of like, why are all these planes taking off together? How did the Army or the National Guard already set up perimeters? And I'm too busy trying to make sense out of everything. And the whole point is nothing makes sense. Just keep moving because people are getting chewed up. You can't stop and think about it. You can't stop and help a man with his kid on the side of the road. You got to get ahead of the herd, so to speak. And that's what I felt the entire time when they were trying to just get ahead of the herd. I don't even know if it's thinking at that point.
Yeah, and eventually it's a good thing they had a truck instead of like a Yaris. They could never have gone off road.
I think, obviously, so I know you didn't play the game, but from my recollection, that whole scene while you were playing that, you were not having that level of chaos. So I truly enjoyed how they fleshed that out.
Yeah, seeing it happen to not Chicago or New York, like in World War Z, or London in 28 Days Later, but seeing it happen from the eyes of an average Joe to an average town was great. I'm granted he's in Austin, so it's not like super average, but it's not like he lives in the big city. He's in a suburb.
And it hit home to me that if you're in Southern California, you're fucked. You're sheltering in place. You're not getting out of anywhere.
Yeah, you're fucked.
So I just looked at that and I'm like, yeah, we're dead.
Yeah. And so other than the intro, there are no zombies in that show. Like, granted, there's more than enough in the opening scenes, but if you think about it, you don't see many of the zombies. You see the murder with the old woman by the old woman. You see some in the background as they're driving away. You see a few, and the one that chases Joel. And I don't think you see any other infected.
Aren't they tearing everybody up in downtown where they're all running out of the movie theater and they're getting chewed up?
A few of them, but it's very, like, if you think of World War Z, when there's waves of zombies running through the street, you don't see that. Now, granted, it's a smaller city, but my point here, I guess, or what I noticed was they didn't have to lay on the zombiness real thick.
I see what you're saying.
To elicit like an enjoyable thing, like because that maybe is the catalyst, but the drama is the human drama.
I would agree with you, and I would point out the scene I really enjoyed where Joel is talking to the, let's just call him cop, security guard for F.E.D.R.A, and he has that interaction with him. I thought that was more powerful than the scene where the old lady kills her family, because
it really shows where their society has come to.
Exactly. It showed the breakdown of humans, the stuff that the guy laughed at, the fact that everything is barter now. Everything is surviving. Everything has use. The cop basically says, I could just shoot you for it. And I was like, what is he talking about? He was trying to scare Joel into not counting the money. And then he realized that he was 5 cards short, because 5 cards mean something in that world. That means a meal or a shoelace or 5 shoelaces or whatever thing you're going to barter next. It's
Joel asked him for the plastic bag back.
Exactly. And we can't understand that. We can look at it. We can hear that. No. There is a large portion of the world that can't understand that level of poverty or need anymore. I tell my son all the time, we live better than kings of old. They couldn't fathom the type of how fantastic our lives are now.
Dude, I'm wearing a cashmere sweater and I'm chilly in my home.
We're spoiled.
That pretty much sums it up. Yeah, absolutely.
So to just look at 2 broken people talking like they're still human, you know what I mean? Because here's my contention. If you were to go back and deal with people in the 1200s, 1400s, they still have a society. they're treating people off, or they're
Mhm.
butchering each other, but there's no we might die off as a species mentality.
1347, that's different.
Well, with the plague, yes, that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, but I see what you're saying.
That's a different level of society, if you would even call that. Like, the society in this show is a penal colony.
Yes, it is.
It's not
yes,
a city that's under curfew.
and you wouldn't know of the. You're introduced to the brutality of the way the world is now in the Cordyceps Infected 2023 of the show, when the little girl makes it to the gates. She's let in only under guard, and she's almost immediately killed in a humane way,
sure,
because she's infected. But they're real nice about it. And then the more you see of the city, and the more people you meet, the more you realize it's this fucked over penal colony. That's a great way to put it. The cop is dirty. I thought he was like doing this all for like 5 pills of oxycodone. I'm like, bro, you're getting swindled. And then he pours out the bag in his hand. I'm like, oh, okay, that's appreciable. Yeah, everybody you meet, even when Joel's girlfriend, partner in crime,
Tess,
a little bit of both. Tess, thank you. Even when she's getting the snot beat out of her she's not all that intimidated, but in intimidation, she even tells the dude who's doing it, like, look, I've done shitty things. You've done shitty things. We'll just chalk it up to this. Like, I don't even care if your boys rough me up. It's totally fine. I'm gonna tell Joel not to kick your ass. And granted, that's not true. But just that she in her life, and who knows what she was before, she could have been an engineer. She in her life has reached the point of, yeah, you fucked me over. I've got a black eye and like a contusion here, and like my jaw's a little wiggly, but I've done that shit to people. It's cool.
Yeah. Another way that it had the similarity of being a jail or a penal colony, the things of value: smokes, alcohol, drugs.
Yeah. He went right to the front of the line because he had smokes.
I was like, oh yeah, they're in jail. There's no way around it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a great way to look at it. I love it when he goes to the front of the huge line and like boss move. He's just like, yeah, I got cigarettes.
Guy smoked immediately, which meant he didn't get them very often.
That's a good point. As a former smoker, I can assure you that if I was in that situation, I quit smoking for my husband well before we could ever get married. But I've already told him, like, if there comes a day, if you die first, I am going to start smoking again. So I know exactly how that guy feels.
Oh, man. The other thing, and this is unrelated, but just to show you how hard they had it, Joel's bed was made out of cinder blocks, right?
Yes, it was on cinder blocks. Totally on cinder blocks. Yeah, it was on cinder blocks. I would rather
sleep on a stack of hay, like in the old days, than on cinder blocks. Jesus Christ. I think he had a mattress over this.
Well, I think he had a mattress for sure. Yeah, because Tess comes in and she bounces a little bit. But yeah, no, his shit was on cinder blocks. I'm sure it was like a wooden pallet, like a shipping pallet on cinder blocks. Again,
you're using everything in that society.
100%. And again, great example. And HBO shows, I think, do this better than most. Let me juxtapose the past 2 shows that I have episodic shows that I've watched. One that I'm starting and enjoying, this one, and the other that I started and it fucking sucked, so I didn't watch it anymore. Willow, which is on Disney Plus. That show can suck my dick. So the problem with that show is they had a charismatic guy that depended on the power of nostalgia to bring you forward through. And that was the only compelling feature of that show, because everything was CGI background and not even good CGI, and the acting fucking sucked. Yeah, and the acting kind of sucked. The story was bad. Here,
CGI is good.
The CGI is good, and I'm honestly questioning when the CGI is used. When you have a sprawling cityscape and a plane blowing up in the background? Yeah. Absolutely. But Joel's room, that's a set. And it's the attention detail is perfect. They could have put that bed on shitty posts, but they put it on cinder blocks because that's what you'd have. And that creates exactly the world you're mentioning. Yeah. So well done. The set piece where the people are about to be hung because they broke quarantine. Yeah. That's a set. And they're just under a stairwell when he and the cop are talking. Again, that's a set, but it's so well done. And even just to the uniform that the cop is wearing, like that, some of that stuff is made of obviously recycled scrap buttons and stuff like that. In Willow, one of the main characters, like, she gets fucking royally fucked over. She's fighting in the rain in a swamp. She's fighting zombies. People are getting stabbed. There's blood everywhere. Her hair is immaculate.
Oh, God.
Like, it's barely wet. And in the next scene, when the rain stops, like, it's fucking coiffed and dry. Joel looks like shit.
Yes.
Tess looks like shit.
Yes.
Everything looks like shit. The only one who's pretty is Marlene, who leads the Fireflies, the resistance to F.E.D.R.A. And my favorite part of her was when her friend starts to talk like, yeah, we'll take Ellie across. And she's like, you don't have an ear. Shut the fuck
That was
up.
a great line.
Because you lost an ear in a fight. And then you look at it like, ugh, I would really react a lot more poorly to having lost my ear.
Yeah. Well,
That stings, I'm sure.
well, ask Evander Holyfield, right?
That's exactly what I was thinking of.
He didn't take it well.
Because you see that.
Yeah. The first one he did well. I should correct myself. The second bite he didn't.
He got bit on both
I
ears?
think the same ear twice. I could be wrong, but Tyson bit him twice.
Okay. Because I'm sure the first time you definitely have a huge bout of, what the fuck is going on? The second time it would have been confirmed. Did he spit out the ear?
I would assume so. I don't think he ate it.
Yeah.
I just saw a little YouTube short or something on that scene. This is the reason why I know so well. Miles Lane took 2 points off of Mike Tyson, gave him point deduction, and said, you bit his ear while he was on the stool. And Mike Tyson was like, no, I didn't. It was a headbutt. And he went, shut up. You bit his ear. 2 points, 2 points, 2 points. So then it happened again. Mike Tyson's on the stool. I think it's Miles Lane, the judge.
Yeah. Mills Lane.
Thank you. And he waves it off, said, you're disqualified. And Mike Tyson's just sitting there going, what? And then his buddies and his cornermen are like, nah, he didn't. He didn't bite his ear. I'm like, what the fuck? His ear's missing. What the fuck are you talking about? Like, his friends with straight faces looking away were like, nah, no, he didn't.
Yeah, like visibly, like a half moon out of that shit. That's a pretty famous picture.
No, I was just, I'm like, I'm not sure if those are just bad people or good friends. Or they could be both. Just to lie like that. Oh my God.
I think to be Mike Tyson's quarterman, especially at that point when he was with Customato, he was a different fighter.
These were the people who jump in the ring after the fight's over, who's in suits.
Oh, these were his friends. Okay, or his handlers.
Exactly.
Okay, that's different. Okay, I think with a lot of them, and maybe with all of Tyson's people that he's ever known after he was like 19, they're constantly on the edge of, are we friends or are you going to fuck me up in about 3 seconds? And I don't know if having seen the semi-autobiographical movie about Mike Tyson, I don't know if he knows either.
Yeah, no, that's true. I give respect to that judge, man. He got up in Tyson's face, even pushed him a couple of times. Dude, big brass balls, dude. Good for him.
And Mills Lane is not a big man. Huge brass balls. I'm sure there was an indent in that mat wherever he walked. Yes. That's crazy.
Well, let's get back to the show. So here's one thing that I can't remember if they had it in the game, but I'm sure they did. The portrayal of Ellie and taking a young kid outside of the quarantine zone perfectly demonstrated why kids don't survive the apocalypse. Because those fucking assholes are going to get you killed.
First thing she does is stand up. Oh my
God, I was just like, just let her go. Just let him shoot her. Let him take her. This idiot's going to get you killed. And it was like, yeah, their brains don't work when they're that young. They're not doing it intentional. Their brains just don't work.
By the way, I don't know how far you are in Game of Thrones, but that girl is in Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Lyanna Mormont. She's badass in that show, too.
Must be an HBO contract, or maybe they just saw how good she was in the show and said, let's use her again.
Oh, she was a fan favorite.
I could see
she was okay in the book, but she was... So you've seen...
Season 8.
Where are you in that show? Oh, okay. So you saw her elect Jon Snow, essentially. Okay. Oh, you're in the last season.
Before the unforgettable season.
Oh, okay.
Or the forgettable season.
No, you won't forget it. Yeah, it ends at season 8, and season 8 is so terrible, it was sufficient to erase any of the goodwill it had societally. Because that show was a force in entertainment for a decade. And the last season was, particularly the last episode, was so fucking bad that everybody said, fuck it, it sucks.
Even the actors.
Yeah, total fan favorite. So she does a really good job. I think she's a great actress. I don't know her name off the top of my head. The voice of her in the game is actually the vocal actors in the game for Joel and Ellie are fairly prodigious vocal actors. I know you and I both like BioShock Infinite and BioShock in general. The voice of the main character in that, Booker DeWitt, one of the main characters, is the voice of Joel in this. So now if you play Bioshock Infinite, you will not be able to not hear Joel.
Seriously. Yeah.
Or vice versa. And both characters of both games do have daughter issues for very different reasons. Yeah, Booker DeWitt is a little bit... He's tough to redeem.
It's such a good game. Such a good game.
It's such a good game. Such a good story. And the power of The Last of Us is that it's such a good story. There's so many different zombie games. There's so many different zombie shows. Why did people like The Walking Dead for so long? It was a compelling story. Why do people dislike The Walking Dead? Well, one, it fucking refuses to quit. But two, the story kind of sucks.
Yeah. Well, I'm a Walking Dead fan. I'm not going to go into that. I'm going to try to stick to The Last of Us here.
It's an impossible comparison not to have.
I agree with you. One scene that I really did enjoy was when Joel snapped when he was placed in the same situation with Ellie that he was placed with his daughter. And he ended up killing that same security guard that he had the bribe and the deal with. Yep. First off, that was a horrible takedown. Second, he should have used palm strikes. It would have been just as effective if he would have broken his hand. But it does show how he snapped, which is understandable. But the part that I liked the most was how he couldn't control the shakes in his hand. How he lost control. And he noticed it. I don't know if it was him flinching his hand because it was in pain when Allie, I think it was Allie or Tess, I can't remember, reached out for his hand.
I don't remember either.
Or he was just trying to get his shit back under control. But I thought it was fantastic acting.
I think it's more the second. Yeah. No, he brings a lot of life to the character. Yeah, that was a really good part. And you're kind of waiting for that glimpse of his humanity because, as we mentioned, he's throwing a small girl into a crematory pit or incineration pit, whatever the name for it is. And that shows how, devoid his life is of a soul. Yeah. But you see it flare back when he's put in that situation again. And he, it gets to the chagrin of the cop, who wasn't a great person. He gets some sort of vengeance, at least. Yeah,
it's said that his humanity, when he gets it back, is complete and utter rage and loss of control.
Yeah.
He didn't have his humanity back when he was faced to save a girl or take her on a mission. It was for anger. So I thought it was a bit tragic in that sense.
Tragic, but also pretty identifiable. What's an easier emotion with which to identify something noble? Because that's fairly rare. I can't think of a time in my life where I've been noble. Nice, sure, but not noble. But I can think of a dozen times where I've been pissed off last week.
Yeah.
And I can imagine that if something terrible happened to my daughter, like it happened to his daughter, anything remotely close to us, like that tickle of anger would set me off.
20 years later, and he was back there.
Easily.
Yeah, this is a great scene.
And to your point with the acting, when I keep wanting to call her Liana Mormont, when Ellie points out that his watch is broken, like you always knew it was going to come up.
Yeah.
He doesn't say anything. All he does is just open his eyes from sleeping, look down, and then close his eyes again. Just that little, what a great characterization. I don't know. It's just really cool.
You can already see Ellie having the same dynamic with Joel that Joel had with his daughter.
I did not think about that. That's a really good point. Really good point.
She's knocking on his doors, on his barriers, and he doesn't want to let her in. He doesn't want to drop his walls because he doesn't want to care. And
I should really have played that game.
She's slowly going to chip away at getting him to be a father and not a smuggler. Or a smuggler who's smuggling his daughter. So that's where it's going to lay out. The last scene was the radio finally turned on. He finally got contact, and it was a song by Depeche Mode. Never Let Me Down Again.
Oh, that's well done. So I have a Pandora station that is video game music, and when the opening credits of the show came on, I'm like, oh man, I know this song. I know this song. Yeah, I've heard this before somewhere. So I looked it up. I'm like, oh, what cover are they doing? Because sometimes they do like a cool instrumental cover. I pull up. It's The Last of Us, the theme song. I'm like, you dumb shit. Just been listening to it, and you need to check what you're listening to more often. You would have realized it, but oh well. So I think it's pretty established what we liked. We can nail this out pretty quickly. What didn't you like?
I made my own criticism. His takedown was pretty shitty. Using his head instead of a palm fist. It's pretty dumb.
To a guy with a helmet.
Yeah.
And because you're not having lightning precision.
Well, what I would have said is normally you'd grab his head and bash it into the concrete, but he had a helmet, so he was good. Also, if you're going to do a takedown like that, that guy would have fired off at least one round, realistically. Right?
Joel's been shot before. He's fine.
So, no, I can't really say anything.
I can't say anything either, man.
I will say this. I am glad HBO Max got the license for this and not Disney Plus. They're going to do this show justice. The settings, the lighting, the cinematography, everything is excellent. I can't throw any stones at this.
Agreed. I really hope it doesn't let us down for like episode 3. Like, this fucking blows.
Oh, God. Well, episode 2 is already out, and I will say it hasn't let us down so far.
Great. Well, I can get my technical difficulties to resolve. I'll watch it by tomorrow night, and we can have this conversation again in a couple of nights. Last thing, why do you think this is important, or why is it important to you?
I always love post-apocalyptic movies.
They're compelling.
I'm always going to sit. Yeah, I'm always in on any of the show except with Fast Zombies, because fuck those guys. I think.
Well, you've got Fast Zombies now.
This is a little different. This has a little exception in my mind because of the way the zombies play out.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll leave it for the next time. But I think the reason why it's important is I think this is a better version of the game, right? You're more worried about inventory and sneaking around the corners, and you can get lost in the game. Or I'm sorry, you can lose the story from the gameplay. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
you're trying to shoot each other. You're trying to survive. You're trying to do that.
Yeah.
And it makes it more personal. But when watching it as a drama, you can connect with the story in a different way. And they're really fleshing it out, and they're playing, things out, like the scene where there's all the chaos and everybody's trying to flee town.
Yeah.
That was way more compelling than playing the game and trying to get Joel's daughter out.
Yeah, because you're only seeing it through the eyes of Joel the entire time. So
exactly.
You don't get that broad spectrum kind of view.
Yeah.
And I agree. The gameplay, and I'll speak for other games, the gameplay can at times detract from the story. And that must be a very delicate balance to hit, because so few games actually do it.
Right.
With one of my comments was, I'm waiting for them to start crafting something. Because in the game, you have to get like Band-Aids, some screws, and a half of a screwdriver to make like a Gatling gun or whatever.
Yeah.
Or like, to make your wrench better, which is very common in video games. But thankfully, they didn't do that. They do address some of the stealth elements, like at the very end when they're sneaking through. I'm like, oh, you do that in the game.
Yeah, yeah.
For me, the reason why this is important is not only the reason that we just gushed about for an hour. It sort of puts a fresh take, or maybe a better take, on a fairly standard post-apocalyptic zombie movie. We've seen tons of them. They've been in the public consciousness ever since Night of the Living Dead, and they've had a huge resurgence in the noughts to now. But with this, and what The Walking Dead did well at first too, in my opinion, is it focuses on the human element, not the horror element. The human's the important. The horror just gives it that little extra, pardon the phrase, meat to sink your teeth into.
I also like the scientific angle on this one, and in episode 2, there's a little bit more of that, and I'm very much looking forward to your take on that one. But we got to cut this. We were only supposed to do 20 minutes.
It was at 15 minutes.
Well, I don't know if episode 2 will have as long as one, but thank you for sticking around with us. And if you are willing to listen, we are willing to talk. Catch you later. Bye. That's it. That's our show. Join Not Megan and myself for our next episode, where we'll be giving you some updates on the Andrew Tate case. Please do us the favor and like, subscribe, share this podcast so we can get some traction. Once I get around to it, check us out on our socials. Combative Nerds on Patreon, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. You know the deal. Thanks for hanging out, and we will see you next episode.